All right, guys. Before I get to the story, be sure to hit the like button. It's free. Don't cost you a damn thing. When you hit the like, you know, we get traction. So hit the like button. All right, guys. So, oh god, I don't even want to cover this. Like, I don't want to talk about Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and all these other fucking right wing kooks because it's a first of all, it's a waste of time, and second of all, like they show me who they are. Like I don't really have to talk about these guys on a regular basis. I don't even tweet about them because I don't give a fuck about them. Like fuck them. Like you know. But anyway, the only reason why I'm talking about this um, is because Stephen A. Smith, brought up the fact that Ben Shapiro said that Derek Chauvin should be pardoned, you know, because basically George Floyd had drugs in his system. But even the autopsy reports came out said that that's not true. He got killed initially by suffocation, like, and he was on his neck for 10 minutes. Like, I mean, yeah, pardon a murderer, pardon a murderer. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I don't like Stephen A. Smith. I said that earlier in this stream. He's a capitalist. He's anti-immigrant. Like, yeah, he's a centrist basically. But he said something that's true. Imagine if that was a white man with a knee in his neck by a black cop. How would Ben Shapiro react to that? Oh my God, bro. Boy, Fox News, Ben Shapiro, all these motherfuckers, man, this shit, man, they'll make weekly segments on that shit. They'll probably go far to say that that black cop should be suffer the death penalty. Like, I know this for a fact. Like, you ain't gotta convince me one way, shape, or form or fashion. I just, I mean, but yeah, like, so apparently they agreed to interview. Um, like, look at the smirk on his face, Ben Shapiro. Like, that dude just, oh God. But anyway, man, I'm gonna play this. I'm not gonna play the whole thing. I'm gonna play. It's gonna be a while, but you know, I fast forward to 8 minutes because Stephen A. Smith talk about beginning of it and stuff. So here we go. Oh God.
On the show. So let's get right into it. As you know, I spoke out against your petition to get President Trump to pardon former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. For those that don't know, Chauvin was sentenced to 22 years in prison after being convicted of unintentional second-degree murder.
And you know what though? One thing that really gets me, like, the guy gets 22 years. Like, a lot of people say, hey, at least he got his due, but this guy should never see the daylight ever again. I forgot how old that fool is. But yeah, let me continue.
Third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter of George Floyd. I wondered if you would feel that way if the officer was black and the victim was Jewish. That was what I said, and your response was to call me a race baiter. Why is that, Ben Shapiro?
Well, to me, the entire case against Derek Chauvin was rooted in a sort of public racial essentialism that I thought was unnecessary to analyze the case. If I'm going to look at this case and just look at the facts of the case, the race of the person on the ground and the race of the officer are irrelevant, and we should treat it exactly the same, whether both people were black, both people are
treated the same. Nah, you capping. You will not treat that the same. Again, if that was a black cop murder a white man, and let's say the white man had drugs in his system, you'll say that this black man should be gone. Like, I just got to be careful on YouTube. He'll be gone. But let me continue. Let me continue. Oh my God, I don't know how I can stand to watch this.
Are white. One person was Jewish. One person was not Jewish. The identity of the person on the ground, I think, should not be the deciding factor in whether or not Derek Chauvin was convicted of second-degree murder. It should be the situation, the facts of the case, the autopsy report, and all of the rest. And so the thing that I actually objected to was the suggestion that
You can't read, jackass. The autopsy report said that, yes, he had drugs in his system, but that didn't kill him. That what? You said you should read the facts. Like Oh God, like I understand that Bill Shapiro plays a part, like Charlie Kirk, all these kooks, even the you know the Parsay dudes, the damn, I forgot the other podcast name on the Democratic side. Like I know that all these people play a part in this shit, in the narrative sphere. But let me continue.
Opinion would have changed rooted in the, say, racial or religious identity of the person who died as opposed to the racial or religious identity of the person who was the police officer. I just don't think that that's how we ought to decide criminal justice cases in general.
In fairness to you, I can understand that in general. Damn it, in most instances, I can agree with that. But those are cases that we hear about. I'm talking about the visual impact. So let's stay right there, Ben. I am a black man, and I see this black man on the ground, face down, handcuffs behind him. Face is imprinted into the pavement. The knee of the police officer is on the back of his neck. He's literally saying he can't breathe, to one point crying for his mama. And it happens for over 9 minutes. I understand from a technical perspective, from a specific analytical perspective, forensic evidence, et cetera, fentanyl in the system, et cetera. I got all of that. My point is, and my question to you at that time was, seeing that, how could you have another opinion? How could it be based on the preponderance of evidence that you threw in?
And you know what? This is so true. Like, like how can you say that a man that did that, all of that Stephen A. Smith said, he went the technical way, should be free? How? It'd be better. Like they're like saying that a person go into a store and unalive 80 people, but all the 80 people had fentanyl in their system. Now the fentanyl kill them, not the bullets. The fentanyl kill them, but they need to be pardoned by Trump. You make yourself sound really, really stupid.
Into the fray in order to ask for this man to be pardoned. I'm just going by, like, there are certain things that you just see, and 1 + 1 = 2.
So, I mean, Stephen, actually, if you go back to my tweets at the time, May 3rd. So, I mean, Stephen, actually, if you go back to my tweets at the time, May 30th and June 1st, same kind of things at that time that everybody else is saying, seeing the tape, because there's no way to look at the tape.
I saw that.
And not be sort of shocked by what you're seeing on the tape, obviously. And then I think that the mark of a reasonable person is to change your.
Okay, you said that you admit that, what happened, I guess, but I still don't understand, like, dude, the autopsy didn't say that George Floyd didn't get the drugs that was in his system. Then, like, my thing is, why are we even talking about this? Like, it's crazy. Like, the right, for some reason, I guess they pro cop. Ben Shapiro is white, right? Is he Jewish? I don't know. It don't matter, but he's white, right? And most likely driving down the road, the cops is not gonna fuck with him. Like, I'm pretty sure they'll probably pull me over for no reason, over some stupid shit, then pull him over. So, yeah, I still don't. Yeah, understand.
Opinion as the evidence changes. A lot of evidence emerged between the time that the tape was released, that horrible 9-minute tape, and the time the conviction actually happened. I mean, there's a full trial, there were autopsy reports, there was witness evidence, there were other people whose testimony was taken, there were multiple medical specialists who were called. And so in looking at all of that, that's the way we're supposed to adjudicate whether or not a person deserves to spend 22 years in prison, not based simply on our immediate gut response to the tape. And again, I had the same gut response to the tape that you did, and I think that everybody did. I think actually that tends to be the gut response of people when we see a lot of police activity. Actually, it turns out that the police do a lot of things that look really rough on tape and really difficult on tape, and this was one of those things. And then as we later learned that, for example, the sort of tactic that Chauvin is using there was actually trained by the Minneapolis Police Department, right? It's a submission technique that's used if you have a person who's resisting arrest, or if you learn during the course of the investigation that George.
But dude, George Floyd was not resisting. He was handcuffed, like Stephen A. Smith said. Well, we saw it on tape as well. Interesting fact, I did not watch that whole 9 minute, 10 minute video. I couldn't get myself to it. I seen the pictures and I seen like clips, but like I just couldn't get myself to watch it. But again, like he wasn't resisting. Yeah, that tactic is for when somebody resists, but he wasn't resisting. God.
Floyd was saying, I can't breathe before he was even taken out of the car. He says, I can't breathe on the longer tape 6 times before he's even taken out of the car. I mean, it's a very long interaction with the police officers before you get to that 9-minute tape, the part that we all saw. And there's a part of the story that you can't see on the tape, which is the reverse angle. You can't see that there's a big crowd that's shouting at Chauvin. Chauvin is responding to that crowd. One of the preliminaries to getting up off of Floyd that way is to call what's called a code 4, which is where it's an all clear, where you feel that the crowd is not a threat to you. In fact, even the EMTs who showed up to provide care for Floyd didn't call a code 4 when they arrived on scene because they thought that the crowd was too threatening. So once you take into account all of the facts, if your opinion doesn't change and the fact pattern is different from what you originally thought it was, then you're not doing your job as a commentator. So I can have the same gut response that you have when I first see.
But again, dude, like you saying all of this shit, like it's gonna persuade me and other people that seen the same shit you saw. See the same shit you saw. So you saying that George Floyd said I can't breathe before Chauvin put a knee on his neck? But still though, it don't give him right to kill a man. See what I notice what Ben Shapiro does. He doesn't. He says things in a technical way to make it seem like it's logical. I noticed that. What in the fuck are you talking about, bro?
That tape. The question is what you do when more of those facts emerge, when you do see more of that evidence emerge, when you do read the testimony and see the autopsies.
See, but I believe, and this is just my belief, because in fairness to you, you're absolutely right. You did put out that tweet initially, and your position was it was shared by the Hannitys of the world, the Mark Levins of the world, and various others, obviously with a lot of people on the left as well, before the preponderance of evidence that you're alluding to came into play. I get that. So in fairness to you, I have to say that. But sometimes I'm going to say this to you because you're a pretty brilliant dude. Nobody can deny it. With what you've accomplished with the Daily Wire, what you've been able to do in your career. I'm just reading something. You were a syndicated columnist at the age of 17, for crying out loud. This is who you are. This is who I'm talking to here. Is it possible that sometimes we could be so brilliant that our intellect gets in the way of common sense? For example, what I mean by that is this, Ben.
Exactly. I agree with Stephen A on that. Like, oh, he's smart. But sometimes you can be stupid. And Ben Shapiro in this point in time is being stupid as hell. Like, dude, murder is murder, bro. No matter how technical terms you put it. George Floyd couldn't breathe, and then the crowds. He didn't call code 4. Code 4. What's that have to do with anything? Like, I still don't understand that. But let Stephen A continue.
It was a knee on his neck for 9.5 minutes. If that didn't happen, is he still alive? I'm not talking about today because anything could have happened to you that day. I'm just saying the fact that Derek Chauvin's knee was on his neck, that to me should speak for itself, because if the man is clamoring for you to get off the back of his neck while you got him handcuffed into the ground, okay, why is it wrong for us to stop there and say, that was excessive on the part of the police officer because you had him contained. He wasn't a threat to you. What's wrong with that thinking?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that could be argued by the defense, and in fact were argued by the defense in this case. One of them, again, was that this was a trained technique by the Minneapolis Police Department to keep somebody in this position so long as you have not called a code 4, which is where you say there's an all clear, and now you can move the person who's on the ground into the ambulance, for example, if you've already called the ambulance, or back into the police vehicle. When it comes to the actual question as to causation of stress can cause death in a person who has a human heart that is significantly larger than normal, the autopsy showed that Floyd, unfortunately, had an incredibly enlarged heart, much heavier than normal. His lungs were much larger than normal person's lungs because of heavy and overtime drug use. He had 11 nanograms of fentanyl in his system at the time per milliliter of blood, which is over 3 times.
Do you know what's really fun?
So long as you have not called a code 4, which is where you say there's an all clear, and now you can move the person who's on the ground into the ambulance, for example, if you've already called the ambulance, or back into the police vehicle. when it comes to the actual question as to causation of death, right? You have to be the proximate cause of the death. It's not just enough for it to be a contributing factor, because it turns out that increased stress can cause death in a person who has a human heart that is significantly larger than normal, incredibly enlarged heart, much heavier than normal. His lungs were much larger than normal person's lungs because of heavy and overtime drug use. He had 11 nanograms of fentanyl in his system at the time per milliliter of blood, which is
I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. I mean, what else can I say? Like, see, that's what he's doing. Oh no, somebody crushing your oxygen supply. No, that didn't kill you. According to this quote unquote smart guy. Gotta watch what I say, but it don't matter. 11 nanograms, like that's a significant amount. But again, like that's not what killed George Floyd. He said stress killed him. Well, my God, yeah, stress is somebody cutting off your oxygen supply. What in the hell? Oh man.
over 3 times what it would cause normally to kill somebody. The original autopsy report openly said that if George Floyd had been found in his house in the same exact physical condition, they would have called it death by overdose. So, all of these things taken into account raises the question of reasonable doubt, right? The standard in our criminal justice system is, in fact, a reasonable doubt standard. And that raises the question as to why there's not, at the very least, reasonable doubt. So you can say that your sort of first jump at this is he's guilty. Look at the knee on his neck. There's no damage to his neck tissue, by the way, in the autopsy report. You can say all of that, and you can say that that's a plausible explanation. I won't even make the case that that's not a plausible explanation. I'll make the case that a plausible explanation is not enough to convict a man in court, especially based on the surrounding circumstances, the amount of pressure that was brought. This was not a fair trial, is one of the points that I'm making. So when it comes to the actual trial itself, there are members of the jury who are at actual rallies wearing shirts that said, "I can't breathe," before they were actually on the jury. There are members of the jury who have openly said that they felt public pressure to convict in a particular way. The president of the
That's a lie, bro. That's a lie. That actually not happened. But I will say this, like, yeah, there are some people that are biased. I mean, we humans. Like, yeah, a jury is supposed to get all the facts, and then they come together, which could take a long time. Because my mama, she was and my mama did jury duty for this woman accused of embezzlement. Like, my mama realized that they didn't have no evidence to collaborate her being guilty, so she said she was the only one that said not guilty. But I mean, okay, like if my thing with Ben Shapiro is like he claimed he got all the evidence of what happened, right? He died of stress. Then why? But again, like, let's say that did happen. Let's say George Floyd did die of drugs, but that's still excessive force, though. You see what I'm saying? Like that pig that Derek Chauvin should not be in the streets. And he ain't gonna mention that Derek Chauvin had prior excessive use of force complaints in the past. Like he been getting a lot of complaints by the people of Minneapolis, but he ain't gonna say that though. Oh, bullshit.
United States, or one of the people who was running for president of the United States at the time, Joe Biden, was openly calling for his conviction. The Minneapolis city paid the family of George Floyd, I believe it was a $27 million payout in the middle of the trial. So all of this tends to go to, is that an impartial jury, right? These all have serious consequences for the jury system. And so there's really a few separate questions. One is, was Chauvin responsible for Floyd's death? I think on that question, I would say no. You can say yes. I would say at the very least there's reasonable doubt. And then there's the question of the amount of pressure that was brought on the jury in this particular case to bring a verdict. This was the most highly publicized trial of the modern era by a long shot, because the incident itself had spurred so much public angst and outrage and massive protests involving 20 million people and riots that had cost the taxpayers some $2 billion, or insurance companies some $2 billion. It was the most highly publicized trial probably since the OJ trial. And because of that amount of public pressure, did Chauvin receive a fair trial is obviously a very crucial question here.
But it sounds like your position is that this is more of a political issue as opposed to a policing issue. And what I would say to you as a black man in America, that there are times, and there's a preponderance of evidence throughout the years that shows that policing has been an issue as it pertains to black men, which is one of.
So, Ben Shapiro's logic is that, hey, technically he didn't. Derek Chauvin didn't receive a fair trial. It was publicized by I guess, the left-wing media. That Derek Chauvin is guilty, even though we have fucking evidence again. Like, I think Ben Shapiro probably blind. Maybe he got artificial eyes or something now. You can't watch the. Like he said, he watched the video. Like, dude, the knee was on the man's neck. It don't matter whether he had drugs. Like, and he lied about saying the jury was basically compromised. That was a lie. That's been debunked, but because that's what I heard too at that time. Like, all these lies from the conservatives, man. I shit on liberals a lot, but conservatives ain't shit either. Like, both of them ain't shit. These people ain't shit. They full of shit. The conservatives, they want to um narrative hump, and the liberals, they want to use identity politics. So, yeah, I just like Stephen A. Smith having this guy on here really was a waste of time. But I'm gonna play a little bit more of this. I can't take it.
Of the things that we constantly bring up. So when that incident happened, I'm thinking about the officer himself, Ben Shapiro, and his intent from the standpoint, you're having your knee on the back of his neck. No matter what, from a medical perspective, we can deduce may have transpired in the amount of time or exceeding 9 minutes, this would not have been the outcome. And because you were insensitive to that, as a trained police officer who should know better, there should be a level of culpability that comes in your direction. So when somebody looks at you, I look at, and this is where I wanted to go as well. I'm looking at a Ben Shapiro, and this is what I meant when I asked the question about you being, about if George Floyd was a Jewish person. I owe you an explanation for that. So I want to give it to you right now. You are known as a proud Jewish individual, incredibly supportive of the Jewish community, being amongst them, Israel, other things. And I was bringing this up because I said, if that were a Jewish person, the conclusion that you ultimately reached, would you have been patient enough to draw that conclusion?
Yeah, of course, he's a Zionist, right? Yeah, he's pro-Israel.
Peeling from the information that was deduced on an objective level to reach the conclusion that, hey, you know what? I don't think he should have been put in jail. That's where I was going, because I know how defensive, or I shouldn't say defensive, but a defender of the Jewish community that you are. And that's what I was thinking along those lines.
Well, I mean, but I certainly hope so, because I can name you a dozen Jewish criminals who absolutely deserve to be in jail. Right, and Jeffrey Epstein was a Jew.
No, I'm just talking about that kind of incident.
Hell, right? I mean, I think that
I'm just talking about that kind of incident.
And my point is,
he dodging the question. See, he won't answer the question. He's full of shit. Like, nobody's talking about Jeffrey Epstein, dude. We're talking about a case scenario, which is a good scenario. I love scenarios. Like, hey, what if that was a Jewish person that got done like that? He wouldn't say all the shit. He said, "Oh, technically, the Jewish person, he had fentanyl in his bloodstream, and he was, disoriented, and he had a bad heart and lungs because he's a drug addict." And what? Because George Floyd did drugs. That gives a pig a right to assassinate him. Okay. That's Ben Shapiro logic 101 right there for you. Jeez.
That whenever, I'm also a lawyer, right? I mean, my identity as a Jew does not mean I have solidarity with a criminal who happens to be a Jew, or a person who's in a controversial law enforcement confrontation who happens to be a Jew. I mean, my job is to literally remove myself from that. And I think also that, as those original tweets show, I don't think that you have to have racial solidarity with a person in order to feel empathy for that person's situation. I think that the whole basis of a democratic republic, or us having a conversation right now, is the fact that we can speak to each other across racial and identitarian lines. Right. And so, again, I think that there are an enormous number of people in the country who disagree with me, by the way, who share both my race, and a lot of Jews who, I would say the vast majority of Jews disagree with me on this, or many white Americans who looked at George Floyd and had exactly the same reaction. And as you say, initially, I had the same reaction as you, and that had nothing to do with race. And so the kind of idea that if let's put it this way, if race is a barrier to logic, then race is the problem, not.
I have a question though. Like how can you? Okay, back then when those tweets saying that what Derek Chauvin did was wrong. Can you go from that to now being really a damn conspiracy theorist, basically? Like got the evidence online now. Google, DuckDuckGo, that shit is free, and you got almost 7 million followers on YouTube, Ben Shapiro. Like a lot of people watch your shit, bro. Instead of you telling the truth, at least, right? You're gonna come out with this fucking conspiracy shit saying that he died of stress and because his heart and lungs is bigger because he was on drugs. Like, are you freaking kidding me, man? That's bullshit, bro. Bullshit.
The solution, right? Let me ask you this. I mean, if you looked at you said before that you
He still didn't answer Stephen A's question.
didn't look at the autopsy report. You're not taking a lot of time looking at the evidence or the autopsy. What would it take for you to change your mind on the case, or is there nothing that could change your mind on the case because you saw the tape, for example?
Well, it wouldn't take much, and this is why I said this, because normally I would look at the autopsy reports or whatever. You know, I saw people bringing up his arrest record. I saw people bringing up fentanyl in the system. I saw all of these things, and all I could come to, Ben, fair or unfair, was that none of that matters if he wasn't on the ground with a knee on the back of his neck for 9+ minutes, because I'm looking at a trained police officer.
Exactly. Like all of that shit you said, Ben Shapiro. It's irrelevant. Like you're not getting it. So you think you know everything because you're so smart. Like I can tell you're an egotistical motherfucker. Like it don't matter, bro. You're not getting it. Like that's like again, like that's like somebody stabbing me 18 times in my back, and they said I died of fentanyl in my system or opioids in my system. No, I didn't die of opioids. I died of fucking blunt force trauma. God damn, boy. I know I'm kind of like repeating myself, guys. I apologize for that, but like this dude is stupid. You could be so smart that you're stupid. That's true. I heard that before.
Who should know better. I looked at the experts who were saying with their trade, there was no reason, and you saw it, I'm sure you saw this, and not to say that you would embrace it with the level of sincerity that others may, because I know the level of skepticism that you look at when you see the news outlets. And by the way, I don't blame you. I'm with you on that, okay? But I would say to you, listening to experts talk about how police officers are trained and pointing to the fact that Derek Chauvin had no business being in that position and putting George Floyd in that position, particularly once he was handcuffed and contained. To me, that, along with the ultimate outcome, is all the evidence I need. And that's where we might differ.
I mean, that's totally fair if we differ on that. I guess the question I would ask you is, given the fact that that was a Minneapolis Police Department trained protocol, given the fact that Floyd did ask to be removed from the car, I mean, in the lead up to the situation, the part of the tape that nobody watches, he was actually outside the car. The police officers move him inside the car. He says he's claustrophobic, and then he claims 6 consecutive times that he cannot breathe while he's in the car. So if the idea is that it was the police officer's knee that deprives him of breath, he was already claiming that he couldn't breathe inside the car, suggesting he was already in the middle of some sort of medical event, right? And then he was brought outside the car. I guess the question that I have for you, again, is what level of evidence would need to be shown for you to get to reasonable doubt? I mean, you seem incredibly certain, right? All I'm saying is that the reasonable doubt standard is what pertains in criminal justice. What would it take to get you to reasonable doubt? Or is there no reasonable doubt that could be achieved simply by dint of the fact that he had his knee on his neck? By the way, it's not for the full 9 minutes. There are minutes where it's on his back. I mean, even the prosecution acknowledges that. The real question is, I think, the last 50 seconds, right? The last 50 seconds of the tape where Floyd stops breathing and Chauvin's knee is still on his neck. That is really the question as to whether this goes into criminal charge territory. Otherwise, he ends up being in a position where he's actually just using a typical subdual technique before you put the guy back in the car and you take him off to jail.
And I'm saying, to answer your question, there's absolutely nothing.
Well, yeah, in the video, maybe George Floyd did said he couldn't breathe. Maybe so wrong, but but you still got to answer yourself this though. Like, don't you think that cutting a man's ass a playoff? You know, you know, I hate to say it like this because I don't want to. Obviously, I ain't gonna sound like an asshole or nothing. But don't you think that again, like, don't you think that ended his life by cutting off his ass supply? Like, that's what we basically saying. A few more minutes of this shit.
That could convince me that Derek Chauvin deserved a different outcome because of what you just articulated, what we saw, even if it's for the last 50 seconds. I'm not changing my position. I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, this is a real question. Do you think? So we've talked about race a little bit. Do you think that Chauvin was a racist? That this was a race-based crime, in your view?
Do I believe that?
Yes.
I don't.
I believe it.
Believe that based on anything about his history that they articulated, because I know how people conjure up evidence to go at it. I do believe his actions.
Based on his history of police complaints, yes, I think he's a racist. Obviously, yeah. Like, the George Floyd thing is not the first time that he did any excessive force. Like, look it up yourself, guys. After this, I'm gonna pull up George Floyd's autopsy report, which shuts down Ben Shapiro's claim, conspiracy theory. Like, it's wild.
Indicated that because I didn't see him doing that with anybody else. And the times that we were living in and the climate, as you articulated accurately, I might add, the heightened level of sensitivity that it exists because of brutality on the part of some police officers. By the way, I never say police brutality because I don't like to castigate all police officers that way. I know if I'm in trouble, I'm calling 911. I'm not going to sit up there and denigrate police officers throughout this country. But there's...
But Stephen A., was you racially profiled like years ago? Remember you talked about it on your show First Take. Like, remember you got pulled over and one of the white cops was real aggressive or something? Like, and then the other cop that was with him knew who you was and then they let you go. But you don't want to denigrate cops? Oh, man. Like, Stephen A. Smith ain't shit either. I don't like, I'd rather have, yeah. Like, y'all know what I'm saying about both of these guys, but like, yeah, like it, like, because you had a few $1 million in your pocket, Stephen A. Like, that cop saw you as a black man. Like, I'm pretty sure you had a suit on or whatever. Or you dress nice because you're rich, right? Like he didn't see all that. He saw a black man driving a nice car. Probably, I know you got a nice car, but I ain't gonna denigrate police officer. Jesus Christ. Of course, the typicals. The typicals.
Rogues that exist in every profession. And I think there's rogues that exist with certain police officers. So to me, he came across as one. And that was my problem with it. Having said that, I want to get to something else because we're going to stay on this subject of race in this regard. When you saw the climate that exists, I understand you believe it was primarily instigated by the left. I want to know where you draw the line in the sand and in terms of veering away from the political and just looking at a case on its merit and saying, this is what I see, this is where I stand, completely devoid of politics. I'm not talking race, I'm talking politics, meaning this has nothing to do with politics. This is the climate that we're living in. This officer should have known better, etc. Do you ever find yourself in a position where you're able to dismiss yourself from the political impact of something or the political agenda of something to draw your conclusions?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think that in this particular case, this is a good indicator of trying to withdraw from a political sort of calculation, given the fact that, as some people have pointed out, on a pragmatic level, they've suggested that President Trump pardoning Derek Chauvin would be bad for President Trump politically. And the case that I've made is that's his job, determine what's pragmatic for him politically. It's my job to call something out as wrong when I see it to be wrong. In terms of criminal justice cases that have involved race, where I've removed myself on the other side, I mean, there are a bunch of them. Walter Scott, right, is a great example of a black man who was victimized by a white police officer. The police officer ends up convicted and going to jail. You're saying I'm not campaigning on his behalf because he deserves to go to jail, the officer in the Walter Scott case. There have been a number of horrifying or police-involved crimes in which the police officer deserves to lose his job and or go to jail, depending on the activities of the police officer. And you have to analyze those one by one. And I think that what we've seen, particularly from the legacy media over the course of the last many years, is that the only types of stories that tend to break into the news are ones with a black victim and a white police officer. And the media immediately jumped to a particular narrative conclusion on the basis of that. And even if the facts end up debunking that conclusion, that narrative continues to be maintained. I mean, a good example of this might be Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, where the initial claim was that Michael Brown was shot in the back by a police officer in cold blood. And it turned out that every aspect of that story was false. And yet there are still people who will, sort of repeat the hands up, don't shoot lie that never happened. I mean, that literally never happened. And that was debunked by the Eric Holder Department of Justice, for example. Okay. So I think that we really do have to look at each one of these situations in isolation. We're talking about the life of a person. If you're talking about narrative, if you're talking about sort of generalized race in America, then I think that it's important to look at as much data as humanly possible. I'm a data-driven person, and so I'll look at everything from the studies of Roland Fryer over at Harvard University about police misconduct toward minorities.
Ah, come on. I'm gonna end it there. They talk about race now. Now, here's my final thoughts, and I'm gonna get to George Floyd's autopsy results. Just to show y'all, this guy's bullshit. Listen, see, he knew it was wrong initially, right? Ben Shapiro, he knew it was wrong, but he chose to go with the narrative that, hey, George Floyd was a thug and he had all these drugs in his system, and Derek Chauvin didn't do nothing wrong. Technically, stress killed him. It's selective outrage by the right. I remember Candace Owens was on his same platform saying that George Floyd was on drugs as well. So yeah, man, like it's just full of shit. Now I'm finna show y'all this George Floyd's autopsy. Let me share my screen. I hope y'all can see that. Should share my screen now. I hope y'all can see that. Yeah, I think y'all can. I'm gonna read it. It says final diagnoses. It says George Floyd, aka George Perry, 46. Um, okay, and it says pathologist Andrew Baker. It says final diagnoses. 46-year-old man who became unresponsive while being restrained by law enforcement officers. He received emergency medical care in the field and subsequently in the Hennepin Healthcare Emergency Department, but could not be resuscitated. The reason why he died, guys, says one, blunt force injuries. And then it says cuteness, blunt force injuries of the forehead, face, and upper lip. Mucosal injury of the lips. Cuteness, blunt force injuries of the shoulders, hands, elbows, and legs. I think that got something to do with those handcuffs. And then pattern contusions. In some areas of body of the wrist, consistent with restraints, handcuffs. Okay. Then it says natural diseases. He had heart disease, hypertensive heart. He had heart disease. Then he had a clinical history of hypertension. Then this one right here on cardioglammy. I'm saying it wrong. Um, so yeah. So basically, his heart and lungs were already compromised. Then when Derek Chauvin did what he did, then yeah. Um, um, so yeah, that's it, man. Uh, so yeah, man, that's it. So he died of blunt force injuries. I mean, what more evidence can you prove?